Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video on my channel, and in this video I will show you how you can easily set up a character in Unity and quickly get started with your project. So when creating any project in Unity, then quickly setting up the player character is a very important task because most of the other behaviors and features depend on that. So it is always better to set up the character in less time and then be done with it before we revisit for further improvements. This video is going to be the first among many in a series of videos, and I'm going to show you several different aspects of character creation and setting it up in Unity. This is primarily going to be for beginners, but if you are an experienced Unity developer, then hopefully this will serve as a refresher for your existing knowledge. Also, this is by no means going to be a perfect and complete solution, and remember that things always have a scope for improvement. Alright, so without wasting any more time in lengthy prologues and prefaces, let's just get started with this video. So before we move on to actually creating the character and coding its movement, I would like to show you the finished product. So this is how the character will be in its idle state, and then we can move it and we can also make it run. So these are the three animations which I'm going to show you how to set up: the idle one, the walking one, and then the running one. Also for this video, I'm going to use the character assets exported from the Daz Studio and the animations exported from mixamo.com. If you don't already know what Daz is, you can go to their website, which is daz3d.com, and then you can download Daz Studio, which is a free software. The daz3d.com website also provides several different assets which you can purchase to use to create different kinds of scenes. There are also some assets which come as a default with the free Daz Studio version, and I'm going to use one of those assets to import in Unity and then use them to set up the character along with its movement. For animations, I'm going to use the Mixamo website and will export the movement AnyBlocks from over here. If you don't know already, Mixamo is powered by Adobe and can be used to freely download movement and many other types of animations. As far as I know, you just need to create an Adobe ID, which I think is free, and then start to use the animations on mixamo.com website. After the animations are exported from this mixamo.com website, I will then import the animations into Unity and will set up the character movement along with the movement animations. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to open up Daz Studio and load a Genesis 2 character. The reason for which I'm using Genesis 2 character for this tutorial is that the Genesis 2 character rig is compatible with Mixamo animations. So what we can do is we can just export this character asset from Daz Studio and then we can import it directly into mixamo.com website. The Mixamo website will then rig the character so that it can be used with their animations. After we have imported the character into Mixamo, then we can export it along with the animations, and then we can continue to import the character along with the animations into Unity to set up the character movement. So let's just export this character and then import it into Mixamo. To export it, what we need to do is we need to select this character and then click on File, click on Export, select a suitable location and then provide a name. I'm just going to name it character, click on Save, and then there will be some export options. What I'm going to do is I'm going to collect the textures to a folder, because when importing the character into Mixamo, then we really don't need the textures to import to, because we are just interested in the FBX model to be imported. Click on Accept and then the character will be exported. So what I will do is I will click on this Upload Character button to import the character, but before that I'm just going to remove the textures for the materials of the character. It will make sure that the character is imported quickly. So this is the folder where we exported the character, and then let's just go to this folder where the textures have been placed, and then I'm just going to delete them. And now let's just get back to the mixamo.com website. Click on this upload character button, select the character file, and let's just wait for it to upload. So our character has been uploaded, and now it's time to export the animations which we are going to need to use for the character movement. So what we can do is we can search the animations over here in the search bar, and then we can select the animations which we want to preview, and then we can export them. So as you can see, the running animation is already selected, so I'm going to simply click on download, and we can download the animation without the skin. So the entire character is going to be downloaded along with the animation, but we don't really need the skin of the character. We are just interested in the animation which it brings with it. So let's just click on the download button. So running animation has been downloaded. It's time to get an idle animation when the character is standing and doing nothing. So let's just select a suitable idle one. I guess let's just select the first one. Okay, so now click on the download button again, keeping everything same. And lastly, we need to search for a walking animation. So let's just search walk, and let's now select a suitable walking animation. So this animation should be good enough for our example, and I'm just going to select the in place checkbox and click on the download button, download the animation, and that's pretty much it. Next, we need to import the character into Unity. But before we do that, let's create a very basic folder structure. I'm going to create a folder, and let's just name it character. Inside this character folder, I'm going to create another folder, and let's just call it animations. And we are also going to need a folder for the script which we are going to create for the movement, and let's just call it scripts. Okay, so let's just import the character. So this is the character.fbx which we exported from Daz Studio. I'm just going to import it. And let's also import the animations too. The idle, walk and running animations. So for animations, what we need to do is just click on this right arrow button. When the asset has been expanded, then simply click on this animation file and then press Ctrl and D. This will extract it, and then delete the original file because we don't really need that, and also rename the animation which we just extracted. Do the same thing for running and walking too. So running, and then there's the walking, and then delete the originally imported FBX asset for the animations. So we have the animations with us. Now it's time to code the movement controller C# script which is actually going to move and animate our character. So let's just create a new script in this scripts folder, and I'm just going to name it, let's say, movement controller. And now it's time to open it up in Visual Studio to actually code the movement of our character. But before we start to actually code the movement controller script, let's just first set up the character itself and make it ready for the movements. For that, what I will do is I'm just going to create a plane on which the character can walk, and let's just make it somewhat larger. And also let's create a sample material for our plane because it is so bright right now. So what I'm going to do is let's just create a material, let's call it surface. I'm going to set its color as kind of grayish black, and then let's just drag it onto the plane. And now let's just drag the character out into the scene itself and bring it up. So for this character, we first need to attach some components to it. The first one that we need to attach is the rigid body, And for the rigid body, we need to freeze the rotation so that the character will not roll like a ragdoll when it is moving, and when the force of gravity will be applied on it, because the use gravity checkbox is checked. We need to add another component, which is a collider, and I'm going to use the capsule collider, which is the simplest one, and it does not take much of the processing units of CPU or GPU. And now let's just adjust this capsule collider, center it, and then increase its height, and we just need to place it somewhere over here. Alright, this should be enough. Okay, so these two components have been attached to the character. The third thing which we need to do is we need to drag this main camera into this character itself. And what I will do is I'm going to set up the camera position so that it will be kind of behind the shoulder of the character so that we can see it moving. And let's also rotate it some like this. Alright, now let's start to code our script for the movement. First, we need some public float properties for the walk speed and run speed, and also for the rotation speed. So what I will do is I'm just going to create public float and then walk speed, and let's just set a default value, and I'm just going to set 0.02. Next, we are also going to need the run speed and also the rotation speed. So rotation speed, the value for the rotation speed can be set as 2.5, and these are public, so we can also adjust them from the scene itself. The running speed should be 0.06, and we also need another private variable for the speed of the character, or for the current speed, which is the active speed. So private and then float and then speed. Alright, after this I'm going to create variables for the rigid body which we attached to the character, and we also need the animator, which I am going to create just now after we code this script. The animator, and then we will also need a field for the capsule collider. Alright, so now we need to fetch the references of rigid body, animator and capsule collider when the script starts to run. So what I will do is I'm just going to fetch the references using game object. So for rigid body, we can call game object dot get component, and then we can provide the type, which is of rigid body, and that's it. And let's just copy and paste these two statements too. So for animator, we can fetch the animator component, and for capsule collider, we can fetch the capsule collider components reference. We also need to rotate the camera along with the movement of the character. So for that, the first thing which we need to do is we need to get the reference for the camera which is attached to the character. So public transform, and then let's just call it camera transform. We can set this camera transform reference from the scene because this is a public property. And then let's also get the variables for the yaw and pitch, which is for the horizontal and vertical rotation of the camera. So private float yaw equals to 0, and then let's also have pitch and then set it to 0. Now our code is going to be in the update method or the update function, because this update will be called whenever an update will take place in the scene itself. So the first thing which we need to handle is the movement and the rotation of the character. So to set the character position and rotation, whenever we use arrow keys to move it and turn it, we need to fetch the axis values, and then we need to multiply them with the current speed of the character. So float z equals to input dot get axis, and then we are going to get the vertical axis, and then let's multiply it with the current speed. And for the float y, we need to get the horizontal axis, and we need to multiply it with rotation speed. So now we need to set the position of the transform. So transform dot translate, and then let's set the 0 and 0 for x and y, and then we can use the z which we just calculated up there, and then we can also set the rotation of the transform. So transform dot rotate, and then 0, and then for y we can use the y which we just calculated up there, and then 0 again for the z. Now this is for the position and the rotation of the character whenever we are moving it and rotating it using the arrow keys. Now it's time to move the camera too. So we need to fetch the values for the yaw and pitch. So for yaw we can just set its value by adding into it the rotation speed multiplied by input dot get axis and the mouse x input. And then for pitch, what we can do is we can subtract from it the rotation speed multiplied by input dot get axis and then mouse y input. Okay, so now we are going to set the angle of the character itself using the value of yaw which we are calculating up there. So transform dot Euler angles equals to new, and then this is going to be a vector 3 value, and then 0 comma yaw, and then again 0. Now to set the angle of the camera, what we can do is we can use the camera transform dot Euler angles equals to new. This is again going to be a vector 3 value, and then we are going to use the pitch here as well for the x value because we want to rotate the camera along the x and y axis. So pitch and yaw and then 0. Okay, so this entire code is for the translation of the character and for the rotation of the character and the camera. So now we also need to switch between different animations whenever the character is either standing still or when it's running or when it's walking. This can be done by using the animator controller. So before proceeding further, what we need to do is we need to set up the animation controller first, and then we can use the flags which we will create in the animation controller over here in this movement controller so that the animations can be switched depending on the state of the character. So let's just do that. Let's go into the character folder and then animation, and then right click, create a new animator controller. I'm going to name it you know what, let's just name it animator controller. Let's just open it. Now we need 3 states: the idle state, the walking state and the running state. So I'm going to first create an empty state which is going to be the default state because there is no state right now. I'm just going to rename it as idle, and let's just add the idle animation to the motion field. There is something which we also need to do for the animations. We need to loop the animations because if we are not going to loop them, then they will play for a single time and then they will stop, and we don't really want that. So let's just loop the animations. And now for the idle one, this is kind of done, and then let's create another state, and I'm just going to call it the walking state, and then apply the motion for this state, create a new state. Let's just call it running. Now it's time to add some flags to this animator controller. So the first flag which I'm going to add is idle, which will indicate if the idle animation should play or not. The second one which I'm going to add is walking. Actually, you know what, just delete it because the name is not correct. So is walking. And the third one which I'm going to create is running. Alright, so now let's make transitions between these states from idle to walking. This will come into play when the is walking condition is true. Create one from walking to idle. This will be when idle is true. Create one from walking to running. This will be when running is true. And then running to walking. This will be when walking is true. And then from idle to running. This will be when running is true. And then running to idle. This will be when idle is true. Actually, alright. And we also need to provide the motion for running. Let's just do that. There is something else we need to do. We need to uncheck this has exit time, because if this has exit time is checked, then when the animations will be switched, let's say from idle to walking, then the idle animation will fully play and then the walking animation will start to play. We don't really want that. We just need to switch the animations instantly whenever the state is changed. So we are going to uncheck this has exit time from every transition. Okay, so our animator is set up and now it's time to get back to coding our movement controller. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a condition over here which will check if the left shift keyboard key has been pressed or not, because left shift is normally used for running of the character. So input.getKey and keycode dot left shift. If this key is pressed, then we are going to check if the character is running. So if input dot get key and then if the key code is W for moving forward, then what we need to do is we need to set the animator's flag, and to do that we can call animator.setBool. So if W key is being pressed while shift is also being pressed, then this means that the character is running. Otherwise the character is simply standing in an idle position when the W key is not being pressed. So is walking should be set to false because left shift is pressed and the character should be running, and is running should be set to true. Similarly, is idle should be set to false. So whenever we will call setBool and then we will provide the name of the flag which we are going to set, then what will happen is when we will set any flag to false or true, then this flag over here will be set to false or true. So this is when the character is running. If the character is not running, which simply means that if the W key is not being pressed, then the character is in the idle position, and what we can do is we can set the idle to true and everything else to false. Okay, so this is when the character is running. We need an else block when the character is not running and when the left shift is not being pressed by the player. So I am just going to copy this piece of code from over here, and instead of setting running to true, what we are going to do is we are going to set walking to true and running to false. And this condition should be the same like the previous one. When the shift key was being pressed, If the shift is not being pressed and we are also not pressing the W key, then this simply means that the character is in the idle position. There is something else that we need to do over here. We also need to set the current speed of the character, which we are using for the vertical movement of the character. So when the left shift key is being pressed, then we are going to set the speed as run speed. Otherwise we are going to set the speed as walk speed, and that should be pretty much it. Now it's time to see if the code is working or not. Okay, so the script is coded and we also need to attach this animator controller to the character so that the script can use it, and we also need to attach the script, the movement controller, with the character. Now we also need to provide the reference of the camera transform which it needs to use to rotate the camera. We can do this by dragging this camera from over here to this field. Now let's get back to the scene itself. Now it's time to run this scene to see if the movements are working or not. Okay, so the idle movement is working. Let's press W. The walk animation is also working, the character is rotating, the camera is also rotating along with the character. Let's press left shift and the character is running. It simply means that our code is working pretty fine. We can just stop pressing the W key and the character will stop. So that is how you can set up the character along with the movement and its animations in a pretty easy way. This example is easy to understand and implement, but for beginners who are still trying to find their way through all the complexities involved with Unity, this can be a daunting task to implement this example, but still I hope that you will be able to understand everything which I have told you and explained in this video. Still, if you have any questions, then feel free to reach out to me using the comments area. Also, if you think that you like this video and it is going to be helpful in your project, then please don't be shy and place a like on this video and also subscribe to this channel if you want to be the first to know about any latest video updates. And I will see you in the next one. Till then, have a great day.